أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين أبا القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، أمن من لجأ إليكم. سادتي يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. فازوا وسعدوا هنيئا لهم. I send my condolences to the Imam of our time on this gravest of days, the day of Ashura. This day of Ashura is, according to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, according to Imam al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif, there is no day that has heaped more misery upon the Ahlul Bayt alayhum as-salam like the day of Ashura. And while the 10 days of Ashura have finished in a sense so quickly, as quick as you can blink your eye, the memory of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and the lessons of Ashura remain for eternity. And the biggest way that you can see that, it's to this day we are all gathering, sitting here, remembering Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, remembering those companions of his that fell with him, remembering what they lived for and also why they put their lives on the line for. And the biggest takeaway that you can get from Ashura, it's not just the story of the actual battle and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam went to battle and lost the battle in a physical sense, but it's greater than that. Nothing is more greater, nothing is more special, nothing would last 1400 years. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had wanted to keep the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah al-Sharif, away from us for another 1,000 years, the memory of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would remain. The amount of people that visit the shrine of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would keep on increasing and increasing. And you could have a whole lecture to have a look through history, what happened with regards to the tyrants at each stage and how they wanted to prevent the people from reaching Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam by using all means. Why? Because we learn from Ashura, we learn from the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam before the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein, before the reform of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, before the day of Ashura, there was no uprising. There was no person taking up the fight against the tyrant. It used to be, yes, two tribes can fight each other, but when somebody is doing wrong, when somebody is treating you in a wrong manner, when somebody is killing the innocent people, when somebody is killing the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nobody was doing anything. There was sporadic, maybe one or two people fought here and there. But in the sense that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala, in Ashura, that was a watershed moment, as they say. That was the starting point where people started to notice and started to see that if I see an oppressor, if I see a tyrant, they are mistreating people. They are not treating people with respect, with kindness. They are killing the innocent. They are committing acts against their families, against the children, against the women. They are taking people's livelihood. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam opened the gates, opened the floodgates of revolution. So much so that you see that when you have a look at revolutionaries throughout time, whether it's Islamic revolutionaries that came after Imam al-Hussein, there was multiple ones. There was Thawrat al-Tawabin, there was Thawrat Zayd, there was multiple ones afterwards. Or you have a look at something that's happened within the past 50 years, within the past 100 years. You see the fingerprints of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on all those revolutionaries. For example, the revolution of the people of India that was led by Gandhi. When you have a look at his history, when you have a look, and you sit down with him, they sit down with him and they say, where did you come up with this? As a single person, as a poor person, coming from a poor background, you have been colonized by 200 or 300 years. How did you get the strength to actually stand up to an empire as big as the British Empire? What was the watershed moment for you? What gave you the impetus? What gave you the support to actually say, no, I'm going to take on this empire because they are mistreating my people? Have a look at what he says. He says, I learned from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam how to be patient and yet win, how to be oppressed but then become victorious. So you see that even though you think people are not affected, and you see, look, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, why do we have to have all these um, commemorations, and does he really have an impact on anybody other than the Muslim Shia? Yes, my brothers and sisters, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, through his words, through his actions, changed generations. He changed civilization by itself. In the sense that people then, when they look at the history of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and they say him and 72 others, 77, let's say 100 other men, decided to take on the tyrant of his time against 70,000 men. And while the history books say that in the Battle of Karbala, Imam Hussein lost. History, they say, throughout civilization, throughout the rest of the time, that particular civilization, let's say, that particular um, dynasty, the Umayyad dynasty, where did it go now? Is there a gravesite for Yazid or Muawiyah la'natullahi alayhim? No. Does anybody remember them in any good light? No, except those ones that want to follow them for the reasons that they were doing. They were killing and they were slaughtering. You've got a few people here and there. They wish they you know, they're saying in Syria, we're Banu Umayyah and we're back and we're back. And it's more for the slaughter. But if you have a look at it, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam stated, Imam al-Hussein is going. I went to the Arba'in in 2009. There was maybe 2 million people walking to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Last year, how many people walked to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? 22, 24 million. More and more people from all over the world are going to visit Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, not because he is just an Imam, because of the values that he lived for. And one of the biggest things is you see YouTubers, you see TikTokers, you see those people, they started to go, they look at it from the outside eyes. Look, it's a fun place to go. It's an interesting occasion that I can go and see Karbala and I can see all the mawakibs and get free food. But then every single one of them, and none of them is a Muslim, when they walk or when they see the dome of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and they enter the shrine of Imam al-Hussein, they say, we don't know anything about him. All we know is that he is the grandson of the Prophet and he was killed in a battle in Karbala, where we are. But they say we are feeling an immense amount of spirituality that we had never felt before, that we have never felt in our insides. And some of them even say, I'm a Christian. Or they say, look, I'm a non-religious Christian person. I'm not religious in any sense. But they say, when I enter the shrine of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, it's like something just grabs my soul. I don't know him. I don't know how to talk to him. I don't know what to say. But they say, as they say, it's like the hairs on the back of my neck or the hairs on my back, they stand up. This is the impact of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, my brothers and sisters. And why I've said, I guess, this intro in a sense, it's let's not miss the point of why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did his revolution and why he came and why he decided to rise up and why he sacrificed what he sacrificed. All of us this morning were wailing and crying because we were just trying to imagine and we were just imagining things in our heads. The Sayyid was reading and we were just picturing it, what was happening, and we were distraught. So then when you have a look at it, how do you think Lady Zainab and Imam Zain al-Abidin had felt in that instance? When you have a look at it, this is why what I've been speaking about over the past 10 nights is we have to learn from all these, my brothers and sisters. It's not that tonight is the 11th night of Muharram. That's it. I forget about Imam al-Hussein. I forget about his morals. I forget about what he taught us. And I go back to whatever I was doing before. No, you use the 10 nights of Muharram, the 13 nights of Muharram. You use this period as a period to charge your soul, to charge yourself up, to continue on for the rest of the year until you get to Ramadan. That's another place where you park your car up and you fill it up with fuel. If you've got an electric car, you charge your car up. You charge the batteries of your soul. This is what Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did. This is why there is a difference between the Shia and the rest of the Islamic faiths, the Islamic schools. Because none of them have Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. None of them have the values of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. None of them have the school of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This is just a small, I guess, bit of some words for us to keep in our minds and to ensure that for the rest of our lives, for the rest of the year, we remember and we continue to live through the life of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Now, tonight is the 11th night. What's the significance of the 11th night? Last night was a night where Lady Zainab alayhi salam, where Lady Kulthum alayhi salam, the rest of the women of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he had his father around him, Imam al-Hussein. He had his brothers, Ali al-Akbar. He had Abdullah al-Radi'. He had al-Qasim. He had his cousins. He had Imam al-Hussein's companions, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, the shining bright light in the family. They were all around them. And you put yourself in your mind that you had 30 people in the family of Imam al-Hussein all around you, buzzing and asking about you and comforting you. All of a sudden, it's silence. All of a sudden, it is quiet. The mother of Abdullah al-Radi', they gave them water. In the afternoon of the 10th day of Ashura, they gave them water. The mother of Abdullah al-Radi', for the past 2 days, she couldn't breastfeed him, so she had no milk. When they gave her water and they gave her food, she was ready to feed her son. But did she have a son? No. Ali al-Akbar, his mother Layla, in the same situation. This was the night that they used, each and every one of them, they used the dead of night to go and visit each of their loved ones. Ramleh, the mother of Al-Qasim alayhi salam, the son of Imam al-Hassan, same thing. It was only 24 hours ago that they were in front of them. The lights were in front of them. They were talking with them. And now they were all huddled in one tent. And through the trauma, through all that trauma, what did we get out of it? You see that they were led by two people who took on the role. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, on the 10th day of Ashura, when he died, his mission finished. He completed his mission. As soon as he died, the mission of Imam Zain al-Abidin started. That's why Lady Zainab on the 10th day of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was martyred, was killed, she turned to him, she goes, "You're the next Imam, what do you want us to do? What's your order? Your father's reign has finished. Your brother's Imamah has finished. What's your next order?" So the reign of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, his Imamate started. And this, my brothers and sisters, if you look at history, if you look at what happened in Karbala and on Ashura, what reached us is primarily from those two people. As they say, everything that reached us about what happened in Ashura started with Imam Zain al-Abidin and Lady Zainab alayhi salam. the narrators, the narrations, the maqtal, everything that we have, because you're not going to have Yazid in his army saying, this is what Imam al-Hussein said, this is what he said, this is what they said. So when it came to the maqtal that we read, the start of it, the narrations about what happened, the story started with three people. First of all, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam and Lady Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. They were the ones that were talking. During that period, it was spoken. It was the verbal time of the chronology of what happened on the day of Ashura. What Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam said, what his sermons were, what his companions said, what Abu al-Fadl Abbas said. And then the person after Imam Zayn al-Abidin and after Sayyidah Zainab who took on that role was Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, continued that mission. Now Imam al-Baqir, my brothers and sisters, if you do not know, he was in Karbala. He was about 5 years old. He was born and he was about 5 years old and he was in Karbala. So that was the verbal transmission of what happened, of the story of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And then we get to the written. And that written part started by a gentleman called Abi Makhnaf. He started to write what happened, the chronology of what happened in Ashura. And he relied on some of the texts from Imam Zayn al-Abidin, from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, what they said. And he also relied heavily on Hamid bin Muslim. So if you were listening and if you heard and you remember that name all the time, he was a bystander. In his own words, I am not for Imam al-Hussein, I'm not against him. All I am somebody here to write or at least remember the what happened on the day of Ashura, the events, and write about them. So the first written book of the Maqtal was written by Abi Makhnaf. He gathered the book and he started to write the riwayat. And then the people that were able to get this book of him were reading the Maqtal of Imam by themselves in their own households. During this time, you see that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, whether it's Imam Zayn al-Abidin, you work your way down, Al-Baqir al-Sadiq, to Imam al-Rida, to Imam al-Askari, then they started to what? Then they started the mission of getting people to sit on the minbar and theology, is it? The word is to start to recite poetry about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. They would get poets and they would sit the poets down and tell me about what happened. Tell us the story. And when they say it, they would tell them to stop and they would say it in a way which is going to make the people cry. So in the same way that the na'id happens, that they say it when they get up. This was started by our imams in their own majalis, within their own area. So they started together, and then history tells us that towards the back end of the Abbasid Khalifa, towards the back end of the empire and the start of the Buwayhi Empire, they started to read the Maqtal in the sense that we kind of do it today. That was the early start. They sit on the 10th of Muharram, a sheikh or a poet or somebody who's able to read and able to say the words in a nice manner. They would sit in front of a majlis and they would start to read the Maqtal of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So this Maqtal of ours started quite a few hundred years ago. And they would sit and read it and read poems along, and people would sit and they would remember Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam until the 20th century, which the current way of reciting it, it's a unique way. If you listen to the Maqatil, it's a very unique way. This specific way was started by Sheikh Abdul Zahr al-Ka'bi. Now has become the most popular way, and essentially the majority, 99% of people usually use that way of reading. So going back, this is how the Maqtal started, and this is how it continued every single year, and we'll be back next year, and our children will be back next year, and then your children will be back after that, the years after, and that will be carried on until the time when Imam al-Hujjah Ajalallahu Ta'ala Faraja comes and takes over the reins. So my brothers and sisters, to finish off, because tonight is a sorrowful night, inshallah tomorrow I'll continue on my discussion and pretty much conclude about all the subjects that I talked about throughout the past nights, about the loneliness of faith, about why you need to stand up against injustices, about all this, inshallah, we'll finish it tomorrow night. But tonight is a reflection, is a night of reflection. A lot of people, when I speak to them, for them, the 10th night, the 11th night, and that's it. They go back to normal. The black clothes get ripped off and they go back to everything that was done normal. It's not the case, my brothers and sisters. It's only the start. Why? Because you see the Ahlul Bayt from night 11 to at the very least night 40, when the heads were returned, they kept that up. The narrations that we have is that our Imams, whether it's from Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam to the rest of the Imams, from the first of Muharram to the end of Safar, they were never seen what? They've never seen wearing anything other than black. They were never seen laughing, smiling. All of that was to show us, to teach us. Now, us, we can't do the same. We can't do what they do. We can't do it in the same manner that they do, but at least we can live through what they taught us. The lessons that our Imams, that each and every one of our Imams taught us, they live through us. Remember that the most important, and I think most of us, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and so thank from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Imam al-Hussein that everything went well, that for the majority of the part what happened and the parking situations and everything went well, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. My brothers and sisters, if I was to sit here and say, what do you think Imam al-Hujjah would talk and would say? What would you think he would say? Imam al-Hujjah, my brothers and sisters, he would be standing at the door and he'll be looking at you along with his grandmother, Lady Fatima Zahra. In narrations that we have, they turn up to these majalis. You can't see them, but maybe you can feel their presence. The most important thing is, I mentioned, and I'll keep on mentioning it, is that when it comes to Ashura, we are the shining lights. We are the people they rely on. Our Imam is not here so people can go talk to him and have interviews with him, but we are the shining light. We are the expansion of him. Our actions are a reflection of their teachings. What we do, what we say, how we act, how we interact. It's very important because I have seen it with some people, is that their interactions is when they come to these holy places, when they come to these places, it's like I am doing you a service by coming to visit the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. We're all here as servants of Imam al-Hussein. We're all here to serve Imam al-Hussein in one way or another. We're all here to learn. We're all here to be ambassadors. When you go out tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you go back to school, be an ambassador. Learn from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Learn from what Al-Qasim said. Look at the ways that they interacted. Look at how they dealt with each other in the most difficult of situations. Al-Qasim alayhi salam led by example. Ali al-Akbar led by example. And this is for the youth. Nobody can tell you that you are not old enough to do something. Nobody can tell you that you are too young to do something. Some things, yes, they might be beyond you. Some things, they might be too hard. But one very important thing is you have to have it within yourself to what? To take on the responsibility, to be able to say, if you see wrong, if you see somebody doing something bad, if you see somebody lying, one of the biggest vices that we all get into is speaking about each other and backbiting. When I sit with one of my friends, I talk about him. As soon as I sit with the other one, I talk about the other one. That's one of our biggest problems, my brothers and sisters. The Ahlul Bayt, when we turn up to their majalis, this is something that we learn from them. Remember, throughout the lectures and what we talked about, when you see something done wrong, when you see something done in a bad manner, you have to stand up. It is your responsibility to stand up. Now, you don't have to have a fight, no. You don't have to have an argument, no. But if you're the youngest person and you see your older brothers, you see members of our community talking about somebody else, remind them. Sometimes all you need to say is that reminding. Sometimes all somebody needs is that single piece of reminding. My brothers and sisters, I'm going to end on this. Is use what we learned from Ashura, what the Sayyid talked about. If you understood what he was talking about in Arabic, use what we talked about to live the rest of your life. To enjoy your life, but in a manner that befits the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. To ensure that what my father taught me about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, how I'm sitting here, in a few years I won't be here. In a few years, one of you guys will have to take up the reins. One of you guys will have to accept this challenge and take up and start to learn and start to get onto the stage and start to talk about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. In a few years, one of you guys will have to lead the prayers in the masjid. In a few years, one of you guys will have to sit there and answer people's religious questions. There is no reason, because we are in Australia, that you can't do that. And I always encourage you, whether it's in Sydney, to our community, to our youth, I always say there should be, from our community, every 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 people that go and learn, whether it's through e-Hawza, whether it's through the actual Hawza, and learn all these things and take on the next part. I'd love for somebody, one of the young brothers or sisters, over the next few nights, once I finish, to actually come up, pick a subject, multiple subjects, about anything you like, and speak about it for 5 minutes. Speak about it for 10 minutes. Something that you are passionate about. You see something being done wrong, whether it's in the street, whether it's in your home, whether it's in the school, come and ask, oh, look, can I talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes? Have a speech ready. And start that next wave of revolution, because you guys are the next stage. I remember when I was young, back in the 90s, the Sayyid and the Sheikh that was sitting on the member was telling us exactly the same thing. He goes, one of you guys in a few years will take on that role. One of you guys will sit on the member, and it's your responsibility to teach the next, to sermon the next generation, and then so forth. The next ones go, and so forth. And how did we all start? We started by little speeches. We started by doing it in school, by leading by example. I was lucky enough to have brothers a bit older than me that were able to go to the principal and say, we need and this was a public school. I don't know if you guys have Islamic schools now. Like my kids are in Islamic schools, so they pray all together. Brothers that were before me, that was a couple of years older than me, they went to our high school, and they were able to get from the principal a room that we prayed in. They put a Quran in there. And everybody after them, even though they had left, were able to come and pray in that room. Sermons on this is beautiful. I've seen people as young as year 8 and year 9 and 10. One of them stands up on Friday with his friends in front of him, and he reads a sermon, a Friday sermon. How beautiful is it to have something like that? These are the things that we learn from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the 10th day of Muharram, in the heat of battle. In the middle of the battle, he stopped the battle and he prayed along with his companions, which whoever was left, they all prayed together. These are the lessons. And these lessons, my brothers and sisters, not just for Ashura. I keep on harping on about it. If you have time, spend 5 minutes. Ask ChatGPT about any subject and let ChatGPT speak to you while you're going to school, while you're going to university, while you are at work. If you have a capability, if you have an ability to start a podcast, start it. Alhamdulillah, we've got quite a few podcasts that are happening. Quite a few YouTubers that are happening. The more, the better. If you see, there's a few podcasters after Maghrib. We've got Al-Wasi, we've got a few of others. Have the impetus within yourself to say, look, can I join? Can I speak? Can I say something? Start these conversations. I saw something wonderful in Michigan. They have a whole street, a mokib, a whole street along both sides, a mokib, and they stop all the cars. I don't know if you can do it here or in Sydney, but it's something beautiful. At the end of the day, this is what we learn from. This is how we introduce people to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. When they say, why weren't you at school on Friday? Why weren't you at work on Friday? Be proud to say, I had a religious occasion that I can't work in. Be encouraged and have that strength within you and courage within you to say, on the 10th of Muharram, I can't come to work. It's something that I did. And now my manager expects qeemah from me every time there's a 10th of Muharram comes along. Why? Because she's starting to understand. I don't know, but maybe in 10 or 15 years, she might start to research about Imam al-Hussein and accept Islam. This is how Islam got to all the reverts. We've got a few reverts, alhamdulillah, in Sydney. Islam got to them. A couple of them, it's like, oh, we saw people wearing black in a Husseiniya. We decided to stop and ask them questions. They answered the questions, and then we went home. 3 years later, we saw on TV there was a march. We remembered what we talked to them about, and we decided to research. Now they are Muslims and Shia, and now they're running some of the youth associations in Sydney. Never underestimate the power of what you can do and the power of your word and the power of what you can bring to the table, no matter how young you are. Because if something doesn't change now, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, on the 10th of Ashura, he died. This time, the year 61 after Hijrah, the army of Yazid were celebrating that they had killed Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But when you have a look at it now and you see all these people turning up to the majalis, what's in your mind? Who won? Yazid or Muawiyah? Yazid or Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? Undoubtedly, it is Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So don't be disheartened if you do something and people don't listen or you don't see the fruits. Sometimes you plant a seed, but the plant doesn't rise up for another year. But at least you have done your part. At least between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have done this for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. I say these final words, and inshallah, tonight was only a light night, but inshallah we'll complete our discussion, complete the discussion about the 10 nights that had passed. I say these final words and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with the honor of being able to live through another Ashura. It's an extreme blessing. There are ulama, there are maraji' that wish they could be with us on the 10th day of Muharram and receive the blessings of Sahib al-Asr wal Zaman and be able to attend the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and attend Ashura. It's a massive blessing, my brothers and sisters. Don't underestimate how powerful this day is. Inshallah, Allah will give us the honor of visiting the shrine of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in the Arba'een and receiving his intercession in the hereafter. And I give the rewards of this majlis to those who could not have been with us, to the scholars, to the mu'mineen who died with the love of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in their hearts, along with the blessing of Surah al-Mubarakat al-Fatiha, preceded by a loud salawat